movie to review. Hane, the horror movie loving suck, is here to review it. Cue title scene. Many of you might be wondering, but wait, Riddick looks like an action sci-fi movie, not a horror movie. Well, trust me, this was scary. The person in the next seat practically wet themselves. Unfortunately, that's more true than I'd like for it to be. You see, Riddick is the second sequel, third if you include an animated movie no one watched, to the movie Pitch Black, starring Vin Diesel. Pitch Black was by far a horror movie, and not just because of how scary Vin Diesel's voice is. You see, in Pitch Black, Vin Diesel plays Riddick, a murderer who has the ability to see in the dark. Yeah, that makes sense. But with it, he's able to defend and save people on a planet that has a once every 30 years eclipse. Because, you know, fate. And then they did the horrible movie The Chronicles of Riddick, which was also sci-fi, but was also horrendous. Then you had the animated movie no one cared about, meaning this is technically the third in the Bald Man Saving the Day trilogy. The question is this movie good on the horror scale? Unfortunately, it suffers from the problem of CGI-itis. That's a real thing, check your doctor. CGI-itis is what happens when a movie relies way too much on CGI for its scares. In reality, eventually, your brain will adapt and realize that these aren't scary. This planet is mostly predators, but it doesn't make sense. How could there be all predators and no prey? In theory, all these things do is kill each other. There's nothing practical about that. At the end of the day, they just exist so Vin Diesel can fight stuff. That's good because it does have a very sci-fi edge to it, but it leaves the scares seeming somewhat pointless halfway through. But that's okay, because then we meet bounty hunters, yay! Played by the very beautiful Katie Sackhoff, and no one else anyone cares about. The thing is that that's when the film stops feeling horror and turns very sci-fi-ish. But it's not very interesting sci-fi, because all it just is him fighting people and picking them off one by one. He's clearly stronger than him, and since by this point all we focused on is him, how can you truly accept these other characters? That's not to say they aren't interesting, but they lack a certain je ne sais quoi. Unfortunately, they're just there so that way he has someone to fight besides monsters. And so that way, towards the end of the movie, he does feel like a hero when he tries to save both himself and them from the monsters. But at the end of the day, you're asking yourself, what's really the point? We don't know exactly what Riddick has done anymore, because according to both the film's timeline and this, Chronicles of Riddick was a long time ago, which means these bounty hunters are literally there to catch someone with a several-year-old bounty, and who most people would probably have forgotten about. At the end of the day, this film feels like it just happens because it happens. He fights monsters because he needs to survive, but you don't understand how these monsters survive on their own. He fights bounty hunters, but in reality there's nothing practical for the bounty hunters to go looking for Riddick in the first place. Sure, it's a large bounty, but at the end of the day, what's a large bounty with that much danger? This is supposed to be an alien movie, which means obviously they wouldn't go to a planet without knowing how dangerous it is. The film does have cool action, and at first the scares are interesting, but in the grand scheme of things, it's all just pointless. It's just a movie for Vin Diesel to be awesome, actiony, and cool, because he's awesome, actiony, and cool. He's a genius at keeping the media on him with his Marvel antics, as well as the Fast and Furious movies, so why wouldn't a studio want to take advantage of that? That's not the problem here. The problem is what we're given is so all over the place, and doing so many different things at once, how could we possibly find any one thing to pay attention attention to. I'm not saying this movie is bad, and I'm not saying if you're not a fan of Diesel, Riddick, horror, sci-fi, or action, give it a shot. I'm just saying go into this knowing you probably won't find this the best movie of the year. It is what it is. It's a fun movie to get us into the fall season, and it gets what it deserves. 5 out of 10 on the horror movie scale. Because at the end of the day, this was a horror movie. This was a horror movie because it has all your horror staples: creepy monsters, okay acting, and plot points that really don't go anywhere. Luckily, there are more horror movies to come as we get closer to Halloween, and thankfully for a lot of people, I do feel this will start it, because it is scary, and when there's scary, there is Hane, the horror movie loving sock.